My name is Augusta Thompson, and I am 65 years old. And on Christmas Eve, my own daughter threw me out of her home with nothing but a leather suitcase and the clothes on my back. I can still hear that door slamming. The sound echoed through the cold December air like a gunshot, final and merciless. I stood there on her front porch, my breath coming out in shaky white clouds, watching the wood grain of that door as if staring at it hard enough would make it open again. But it didn't. It stayed shut. Locked. Bolted against me like I was some kind of criminal. And then I heard him. My son-in-law, Richard. His laughter came muffled through the door, cruel and sharp. "Let's see how you survive now, old woman," he shouted, and I could hear my daughter, my own flesh and blood, giggling alongside him. Giggling. Like my suffering was entertainment. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip the handle of that suitcase. It was the only thing I owned anymore, that worn leather case my late husband had given me 40 years ago. Everything I had left in this world fit inside it. A few changes of clothes. A photo album. My reading glasses. Some toiletries. That was it. 65 years of living, and this is what it came down to. The suitcase slipped from my numb fingers and tumbled down the icy front steps, hitting each one with a hollow thud before landing in the snow at the bottom. I watched it fall, and something inside me fell with it. My dignity, maybe. My faith in humanity. My belief that the child I'd raised with every ounce of love in my body could never, ever do something like this to me. But she had. She did. And before I tell you what happened next, before I take you through this nightmare that became the strangest blessing of my life, I need to ask you something. Please, if you're listening to this story, I don't see any reason why you will refuse to hit that like button, subscribe to this channel and engage in the comment section telling me if my story resonated with you and what part 1 should improve more. Your support only is what keeps stories like mine alive, what gives voices to people like me who were silenced, who were thrown away like garbage. Please subscribe. Let's build a great family together. I need to know there are people listening to these stories I drop every day. Thank you. Now let me continue. I somehow made it down those steps without falling, though Lord knows my legs felt like they would give out at any moment. The cold bit through my thin coat, the only coat I had, and I could feel it seeping into my bones. I'm not a young woman anymore. At 65, the cold doesn't just chill you. It threatens you. It promises you things. Dark things. I picked up my suitcase from the snow, my arthritic fingers screaming in protest, and I started walking. I didn't know where I was going. I had nowhere to go. No family except the daughter who'd just cast me out. No friends left. Richard had systematically isolated me from them over the years, poisoning my relationships one by one until I had no one. The neighborhood was decorated for Christmas. Every house glowed with warm light, strands of colorful bulbs twinkling in windows, inflatable Santas and reindeer dotting the lawns. Somewhere, a church bell rang out a carol. Silent night, I think it was. Holy night. All is calm, all is bright. What a joke. I found myself at a small park about 4 blocks from my daughter's house. There was a bench there, covered in snow, underneath a street lamp that flickered weakly. I brushed off the snow with my sleeve and sat down, setting the suitcase beside me. And then I just sat there. Freezing. Abandoned. Wondering how in God's name my life had come to this point. Do you know what it feels like to be thrown away by your own child? Do you have any concept of that particular brand of pain? It's not like losing a spouse to death. I'd been through that too, when my Harold passed 7 years ago. That pain was clean, if pain can ever be clean. It was sad and it was deep, but it made sense. Death comes for us all. But this? This was different. This was a choice. My daughter, Vanessa, chose to do this to me. She looked me in the eyes and chose cruelty. She chose her hateful husband over her own mother. She chose comfort and money and that big house over basic human decency. And the worst part? The part that was twisting in my gut like a knife? I'd seen it coming for years, and I'd done nothing to stop it. I should back up. I should tell you how this happened, because it didn't happen overnight. Betrayal like this doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It grows slowly, like mold in a dark corner, spreading and spreading until it consumes everything. Let me tell you about Vanessa. My daughter. My only child. I raised her alone after Harold died. Well, not entirely alone. Harold had been sick for a long time before the end, so I'd essentially been a single parent for years even before I became a widow. I worked 2 jobs to keep Vanessa in good schools, to make sure she had opportunities one never had. I cleaned office buildings at night and worked retail during the day, sleeping maybe 4 hours if I was lucky. I missed countless hours of sleep to help her with homework. I went without new clothes, without vacations, without any luxury at all so she could have piano lessons, dance classes, tutoring. I showed up to every recital, every parent-teacher conference, every school event, even when I was so exhausted I could barely stand. I loved that girl with everything in me. She was my world. My purpose. My reason for getting up every morning and pushing through the exhaustion and the loneliness. And she was a good kid. Truly. Sweet and thoughtful and kind. She'd bring me dandelions from the yard and call them bouquets. She'd draw me pictures and leave them on my pillow. She'd hug me tight and tell me I was the best mama in the whole world. Where did that little girl go? She met Richard when she was 26. He was 32, worked in finance, drove a BMW, wore expensive suits. He was handsome in that polished, artificial way some men are. Perfect teeth. Perfect hair. Everything about him screamed money and status. I didn't like him from the start. I know, every mother says that about their daughter's boyfriend. But there was something about Richard that set my teeth on edge. The way he looked at me, like I was beneath him. The way he talked about poor people, service workers, anyone he considered less than. The casual cruelty in his jokes. But Vanessa was smitten. She was dazzled by his wealth, his confidence, his promises of a better life. And who could blame her? She'd grown up watching me struggle. She'd worn hand-me-downs and eaten generic cereal and lived in a tiny apartment. Richard represented everything she'd never had. They got married within a year. I paid for half the wedding, it nearly bankrupted me, but I did it because I wanted her to be happy. Richard's family paid for the other half, and they made sure everyone knew it. His mother looked at my contribution like I'd handed her a bag of garbage. At first, things were okay. Vanessa would call me every week, visit me once a month. Richard was cold to me but civil. I could live with that. I had my daughter in my life, and that was enough. But then things started to change. The calls became less frequent. Every 2 weeks, then once a month, then only on holidays. When I'd call her, she'd sound distracted, rushed. I can't talk right now, Mom. Richard and I are heading to dinner. I'm busy, Mom. I'll call you back. She never did. The visits stopped altogether. She'd make excuses, too busy with work, Richard's family was in town, they were going on vacation. Always something. And when I'd suggest coming to visit them, Richard would have reasons why it wasn't a good time. The guest room was being renovated. They had friends staying over. They were hosting a party and it wouldn't be appropriate. Appropriate. As if my presence in my own daughter's home was inappropriate. I tried to talk to Vanessa about it. Honey, I feel like you're pulling away from me, I said during one of our rare phone calls. Is everything okay? Mom, you're being dramatic, she replied, her voice tight with irritation. I'm just busy. Adults have responsibilities. You wouldn't understand. I wouldn't understand? I wanted to scream at her. I, who worked myself to the bone to raise you. I, who sacrificed everything for you. I wouldn't understand responsibility? But I didn't scream. I swallowed my hurt and said, "Of course, honey. I understand." I didn't, though. I didn't understand how the daughter I'd raised could become so cold. Things got worse 3 years ago when I had my accident. I was walking home from the grocery store when a car ran a red light and hit me in the crosswalk. Broke my leg in 2 places, fractured my hip, gave me a concussion. I was in the hospital for 2 weeks and in rehabilitation for months after that. I lost both my jobs. Couldn't work, couldn't pay rent. My savings evaporated within weeks. Medical bills, even with insurance, are no joke. I was drowning, desperate, terrified of ending up on the streets. So I called Vanessa. My daughter. My only family. "Honey, I need help," I said, hating how small my voice sounded. "I can't work, I can't pay my rent. I'm going to lose my apartment. Could I maybe stay with you for a little while? Just until I get back on my feet?" The silence on the other end of the line lasted so long I thought the call had dropped. "Mom," she finally said, and her voice was different. Harder. "Richard and I have talked about this. We think it's time you learned to stand on your own 2 feet. You've always been so dependent, so needy. It's not healthy." Dependent? Needy? I'd supported myself my entire adult life. I'd raised her alone. I'd never asked her for a single thing until that moment. "Vanessa, I'm not being needy," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm injured. I'm 62 years old and I'm injured and I have no money and nowhere to go. I'm asking my daughter for help. Is that really so unreasonable?" "You're being manipulative," she said, and I could hear Richard's words coming out of her mouth. He'd poisoned her against me, dripped his venom into her ear day after day until she started to believe his lies. "You're trying to make me feel guilty. But I won't let you control me anymore, Mom. I won't." Control her? When had I ever tried to control her? "I'll send you some money," she continued. "Enough for a few months' rent. But after that, you need to figure things out on your own. I can't keep bailing you out." Bailing me out? This was the first time I'd ever asked for help. But I took the money. What choice did I have? I took it and I found a cheaper apartment and I fought my way through recovery alone. No visits from Vanessa. No calls asking how I was doing. Just silence. That was when I should have seen the truth. That was when I should have accepted that I'd lost my daughter to Richard's influence, to greed, to a version of herself I didn't recognize. But I didn't accept it. I kept hoping. Kept believing that somewhere inside that cold woman was the little girl who'd brought me dandelions. I kept trying to reach out, to maintain some connection. I'd sent her birthday cards, Christmas gifts I could barely afford. I'd call and leave voicemails she never returned. I'd text and get one-word responses, if I got any response at all. And then, 6 months ago, everything fell apart completely. I had a small pension from one of my old jobs. Nothing much, barely $600 a month, but it was something. It was what kept me fed, kept a roof over my head. The company that managed the pension fund went bankrupt. Fraud, corruption, mismanagement, the details don't matter. What matters is that my pension disappeared overnight. Gone. Just like that. I was back to having nothing. No income. No savings. No way to pay rent or buy food. So I called Vanessa again. And again, I asked for help. This time, Richard answered her phone. "Augusta," he said, my name dripping with disdain. Vanessa's busy. What do you want? I need to talk to my daughter, I said. It's important. If it's about money, the answer is no. Richard, please. I've lost my pension. I have nothing. I just need. You need to stop being a burden, he interrupted. Vanessa and I have worked hard for what we have. We're not going to throw it away on someone who can't be bothered to take care of themselves. Someone who can't be bothered? I'd worked 2 jobs for decades. I'd raised a child alone. I'd survived poverty and widowhood and injury. How dare he suggest I hadn't taken care of myself? Please, I said, hating myself for begging. Please just let me talk to Vanessa. He hung up on me. But Vanessa called me back an hour later. And when she did, she said the words that broke something fundamental inside me. Mom, Richard and I have been talking. We think it would be best if you came to stay with us. We have plenty of room, and it doesn't make sense for you to struggle when we can help. I should have known it was too good to be true. I should have heard the flatness in her voice, the rehearsed quality of her words. But I was desperate and I was lonely and I wanted so badly to believe my daughter still loved me. So I said yes. I gave up my apartment, packed my things into that leather suitcase, and moved into Vanessa and Richard's beautiful house in their expensive neighborhood. And for exactly 3 months, I lived in hell. They put me in a small room in the basement. No windows. A twin bed and a cheap dresser, nothing else. The room was freezing, they didn't bother to heat the basement properly, and damp. I could hear pipes clanging and the furnace roaring at all hours. Richard made his expectations clear on my first day there. You'll earn your keep, he said. Cook our meals. Clean the house. Do the laundry. We're being generous by letting you stay here, so you need to make yourself useful. I wasn't a guest. I was a servant. An unpaid housekeeper in my own daughter's home. And Vanessa said nothing. She just stood there, looking at her phone, nodding along with her husband's commands. I did everything they asked. I cooked elaborate meals they barely touched, criticizing every dish. Too salty. Too bland. Overcooked. Undercooked. Nothing was ever good enough. I cleaned their massive house from top to bottom every day, my back screaming in pain, my hip aching from the old injury. I did their laundry, folded their clothes, scrubbed their toilets, mopped their floors. And they treated me like dirt. Richard would leave his coffee cups on tables just so I'd have to pick them up. He'd track mud through the house deliberately, then yell at me for not cleaning it fast enough. He'd invite friends over and introduce me as Vanessa's mother, she's staying with us temporarily, in a tone that made it clear I was an embarrassment. Vanessa was worse, in a way, because she was my daughter. Richard was a cruel stranger, I expected nothing from him. But Vanessa? Every cold word from her mouth was a knife in my heart. She'd correct me in front of Richard's friends. Mom, you folded the towels wrong. I've shown you 100 times. She'd complain about me to Richard like I wasn't standing right there. I don't know why she can't just follow simple instructions. She never called me Mom when talking to me directly anymore. It was always you or Augusta said with irritation. I tried to talk to her, alone, mother to daughter. I caught her one morning in the kitchen before Richard woke up. Honey, I said softly. Can we talk? Please? She didn't look up from her phone. About what? About us. About what's happened between us. I feel like I don't even know you anymore, and I. Oh my God, Mom, stop being so needy. She looked up then, her face twisted with anger that seemed to come from nowhere. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're always so emotional, always demanding attention and validation. Can't you just exist without making everything about you? Making everything about me? All I'd done for 3 months was serve her and her husband like a slave. All I was asking for was 5 minutes of conversation, some acknowledgement that I was her mother, that I was a human being deserving of basic respect. But I saw it in her eyes then. The truth I'd been avoiding. She didn't see me as her mother anymore. She saw me as Richard saw me, as a burden. An inconvenience. Something to be tolerated at best and eliminated at worst. Things came to a head on Christmas Eve. They were having a party. Richard's colleagues and their wives, some of Vanessa's friends, about 20 people total. I spent all day cooking, appetizers, main courses, desserts. My feet were swollen and my hands were raw from washing dishes and my back felt like it might snap in half, but I kept going because I thought maybe if I did this perfectly, Vanessa would see how hard I was trying. The guests arrived at 7. Expensive cars lined the street. Women in designer dresses and men in tailored suits filed into the house, bringing wine and laughter and the scent of costly perfume. I stayed in the kitchen, making sure everything was perfect. I arranged platters and garnished plates and kept the food coming while the party roared in the other room. Around 9, Richard came into the kitchen. He was drunk, I could smell the whiskey on him, and his face was flushed. "Augusta," he said. "Come here." I approached cautiously. "Is everything okay? Do you need more food?" "No." He looked me up and down with disgust. "I need you to understand something. You've been here for 3 months, and you've contributed nothing. You eat our food, use our electricity, take up space in our home. And frankly, Vanessa and I are tired of it." My heart started pounding. "Richard, I've done everything you asked. I clean, I cook, You're a financial burden," he interrupted. "Do you have any idea how much it costs to support another person? We didn't sign up for this to be permanent. We thought you'd get back on your feet, find a job, move out. But you're just existing here. Like a parasite." The word hit me like a slap. Parasite. "I'm 65 years old," I said, my voice shaking. "Who's going to hire me? I have health problems, I can't." "That's not our problem." He stepped closer, his voice rising. "We have our own lives, our own future to think about. We want to start a family, buy a bigger house, and travel. We can't do that with you dragging us down." Vanessa appeared in the doorway then. She must have heard him shouting. "Richard, keep your voice down," she hissed. "The guests will hear." The guests. That's what she cared about. Not her husband verbally abusing her mother, but what the guests might think. "I'm done keeping my voice down," Richard said. "I'm done pretending this situation is acceptable. She needs to leave, Vanessa. Tonight." Vanessa's eyes went wide. "Tonight? Richard, it's Christmas Eve. It's freezing outside. I don't care what day it is. I want her gone." I looked at my daughter, pleading silently. "Stand up for me. Tell him no. Choose your mother over this monster." But she didn't. "Okay," she said quietly. "Okay, Mom, I think Richard's right. This isn't working out. You should go." The room tilted. I grabbed the counter to steady myself. "Go where?" I whispered. "Vanessa, I have nowhere to go. No money." "No. That's not my responsibility," she said, and her voice was cold as the winter outside. "You're an adult. You'll figure it out. I'm your mother." "And I've done enough," she shouted back, all the frustration she'd been building for months exploding out. "I've done enough for you. My whole childhood, you made me feel guilty for every dollar you spent on me, every sacrifice you made. Well, I've repaid that debt. I let you live here. I fed you. I'm done, Mom. I'm done feeling obligated to take care of you. Tears were streaming down my face. I never asked you to feel obligated. I never wanted to be a burden. I just needed help, and I thought my daughter would. Well, you thought wrong, Richard said. Pack your things. You have 10 minutes. 10 minutes. To pack up my life. To say goodbye to my daughter. To step out into the freezing Christmas Eve night with nowhere to go. I looked at Vanessa one more time. Please, I whispered. Please don't do this. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Just go, Mom. So I went to the basement. I packed my suitcase through a blur of tears. I put in what few clothes I had, the photo album with pictures of Vanessa as a baby, as a child, as a teenager smiling and happy and loving. I put in Harold's watch, the last thing I had of my husband. I climbed those basement stairs for the last time and walked through that beautiful house, past the party guests who pretended not to notice the crying old woman with a suitcase. I reached the front door. Richard was there, grinning. Actually grinning. Good riddance, he said as I stepped outside. Let's see how you survive now, old woman. And my daughter, my baby girl, the child I'd grown inside my body, the little one I'd nursed and rocked and sang to, she laughed. She actually laughed. Then the door slammed. And I was alone in the cold and the dark. Which brings me back to that park bench. To me sitting there freezing, wondering if this was how my story would end. Alone on Christmas Eve, abandoned by the only person I had left in this world. I sat there for I don't know how long. An hour? 2? My body went numb with cold until I couldn't feel my fingers or toes anymore. Part of me thought about just staying there, just letting the cold take me. What did I have to live for anyway? But then I saw her. A woman, maybe in her 40s, walking through the park. And she wasn't dressed for the weather at all. No winter coat, just a thin cardigan over a blouse and slacks. Her shoulders were shaking violently, her arms wrapped around herself trying to hold in warmth that wasn't there. She walked past me, her teeth chattering so hard I could hear them clicking together. And something in me shifted. Here I was, feeling sorry for myself, thinking I had nothing left. But I had a coat. Not a great coat, not a warm coat, but a coat. And this woman had nothing. I stood up. My legs screamed in protest after sitting in the cold for so long, but I ignored them. I shuffled after her. Excuse me, I called out. Miss? She turned, her face wary. People on the streets late at night have reason to be cautious. I noticed you don't have a coat, I said, already unbuttoning mine. Please, take this. Her eyes went wide. I can't. You'll freeze. I'll manage, I lied. I had no idea if I'd manage. But looking at this shivering woman, I knew I couldn't just walk away. Please. I want you to have it. I stepped forward and draped my coat over her shoulders. It was too small for her, but she wrapped it around herself gratefully. Her eyes filled with tears. She looked at me like I'd just given her the world instead of a threadbare coat from a thrift store. Thank you, she whispered. You have no idea, thank you. She started to say something else, but her voice caught. She just nodded, over and over, clutching that coat around her. Then she turned and walked away, disappearing into the swirling snow. And I stood there in just my thin sweater, the wind cutting through me like knives. But you know what? I felt warmer than I had in months. Because for the first time since moving into Vanessa's house, I'd done something that mattered. Something good. Something that reminded me I was still human, still capable of kindness even when the world had been nothing but cruel to me. I made my way back to the bench and sat down again. The cold was worse now without the coat, but somehow I didn't care as much. I'd helped someone. In my darkest moment, I'd found it in myself to help another person. That had to count for something, didn't it? I don't know how much time passed. I was starting to drift, the cold making me drowsy in that dangerous way. My eyes kept closing even though I fought to keep them open. Then I heard the engines. At first, I thought I was hallucinating. The cold does that to you, makes you see and hear things that aren't there. But the sound got louder, more insistent. I opened my eyes and saw them. Headlights cutting through the snow. Not just one car. Multiple cars. They rolled into the park one after another, black SUVs with tinted windows, sleek and expensive and completely out of place in this neighborhood. I counted them as they came. 4, 6, 8, 10. 10 black SUVs, pulling up in a semicircle around my bench. My heart started racing. Was I being robbed? Kidnapped? Some gang using this park for God knows what kind of business? The doors opened simultaneously. All of them, at once, like something out of a movie. People stepped out, men in dark suits, women in professional attire. They moved with precision, with purpose. And then she stepped out. The woman. The one I'd given my coat to. But she looked completely different now. Her hair, which had been hanging limp and wet before, was now styled perfectly. She wore a long cashmere coat that probably cost more than I'd made in a year. Diamond earrings caught the street light. She moved with confidence, with power. Behind her, people followed. Assistants, I realized. Bodyguards. An entire entourage. She walked directly to me. Her heels clicked on the frozen pavement. She stopped a few feet away and looked down at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Then she spoke. Just one sentence. But it was a sentence that would change everything. "I've seen enough," she said, her voice quiet but carrying absolute authority. "Come with me." I stared at her, my brain struggling to process what was happening. This couldn't be real. None of this could be real. "I don't understand," I managed to say through my chattering teeth. She smiled then, small and sad. "I know you don't. But you will. Please, Augusta. Come with me. You don't have to freeze out here anymore." How did she know my name? I hadn't told her my name. Two of her assistants came forward with a blanket. They wrapped it around my shoulders gently, professionally. Someone else picked up my suitcase. "I'll explain everything," the woman said. "But first, let's get you warm and safe." "Can you walk?" Could I? I honestly didn't know. But with their help, I stood. My legs wobbled but held. They guided me to one of the SUVs. The interior was warm and luxurious. Leather seats. Soft lighting. So different from the cold bench I'd been preparing to die on. The woman climbed in beside me. The door shut, blocking out the wind and snow. The sudden warmth made my skin prickle painfully. "My name is Catherine Wells," she said as the SUV began to move. "And every year on Christmas Eve, I do something my family thinks is crazy. I disguise myself as someone in need and I walk through the poorest neighborhoods of this city. Do you know why?" I shook my head, still not entirely convinced this was happening. "Because I need to know if there's still kindness left in the world," she continued. "I'm a CEO, Augusta. I run a multinational corporation. I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. And every single day, I'm surrounded by people who want something from me. People who smile to my face and calculate my worth behind my back. It's exhausting. It's isolating. It makes you wonder if anyone would show you basic human compassion if you didn't have power and money." She paused, looking out the window at the passing lights. "So every Christmas Eve, I find out. I strip away the designer clothes and the jewelry and the security detail. I walk around vulnerable, cold, in need. And I see how people treat me. Most just walk past. Some are actively cruel. But every once in a while, someone like you comes along. I finally found my voice. Someone like me? Someone who has nothing and still finds it in their heart to give. Someone who's suffering and still notices another person's suffering more than their own. Someone who chooses kindness when they have every reason to choose bitterness. Tears started rolling down my cheeks. I was too overwhelmed to stop them. You gave me your coat, Augusta. Your only coat, on the coldest night of the year, when you yourself were freezing. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are. About your character. Your heart. I couldn't let you suffer, I whispered. Exactly, she said softly. You passed the test. A test you didn't even know you were taking. And now I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to really think about your answer. Would you like to come stay at my estate? Not as a guest, not as charity. I'm offering you a place, a purpose, a chance to rebuild your life. I have a foundation that helps people in need, and I could use someone with your compassion to help run it. Someone who understands what it's like to have nothing. What do you say? What did I say? What could I say? This woman, this stranger, was offering me everything I'd been begging my own daughter for. Safety. Warmth. Dignity. Purpose. Yes, I breathed. Yes, please. I don't know how to thank you. You already did, Catherine said. You gave me your coat. The estate was like something out of a fairy tale. Massive stone building, sprawling grounds, rooms upon rooms of beautiful furniture and artwork. They gave me my own suite, a bedroom with an actual fireplace, a private bathroom with a soaking tub, a sitting room with bookshelves full of classics. I stood in the middle of that bedroom and cried. Great heaving sobs that came from somewhere deep inside me. All the pain and fear and humiliation of the past months came pouring out. A staff member, a kind woman named Marie, brought me tea and sat with me while I cried. She didn't ask questions. She just sat there, a quiet presence, until I could breathe again. That first night, I soaked in the tub for an hour, letting the hot water thaw my frozen body and spirit. I put on the soft pajamas they'd provided and climbed into a bed with sheets that felt like clouds. And I slept for 14 hours straight. When I woke up, I thought maybe I'd dreamed it all. But no, I was still in that beautiful room. Still safe. Still warm. The next few weeks were a blur of recovery and discovery. Catherine had a doctor examine me, my blood pressure was dangerously high, my vitamin levels were in the basement, my old hip injury had worsened from all the cleaning I'd done at Vanessa's. They got me on medications, supplements, and a physical therapy regimen. I started eating regular, nutritious meals. The staff treated me with respect, called me Mrs. Thompson, and asked my opinions on things. It was such a stark contrast to how Richard and Vanessa had treated me that sometimes I'd just start crying in the middle of dinner. But Catherine understood. She'd lost her own mother young, she told me. She knew what it was like to long for a family that was gone or that had failed you. Family isn't always blood, she said to me one evening as we sat by the fire in her study. Sometimes family is the people who choose to love you. Who sees you at your worst and decides you're worth fighting for. She started teaching me about her foundation. It provided resources for homeless women, elderly people in poverty, and families in crisis. She wanted to expand it, and needed someone with real-world experience to help guide it. You've lived through what these people are living through, she said. You know what they need because you need it. I can write checks, but you can provide insight I never could. So I learned. I read books on nonprofit management. I attended meetings. I started visiting the shelters and community centers the foundation supported, talking to the people there, understanding their struggles. And slowly, day by day, I transformed. Not just physically, though the healthy food and medical care certainly helped. But internally. I started remembering who I was before Vanessa and Richard tried to break me. I started believing I had value again. Worth. Purpose. I was becoming Augusta Thompson again. Not just Vanessa's disappointing mother. Not just Richard's unpaid servant. But me. Whole and complete and capable. 3 months after Catherine found me, I was managing the foundation's day-to-day operations. 6 months after that, I was traveling to other cities, helping establish new programs. I spoke at fundraisers, testified before city councils, wrote grants. I was good at it. Really good. Catherine told me often how invaluable I'd become, but I could see it for myself in the results. More families were housed. More people fed. More lives changed. I found friends among the foundation staff. Real friends who valued me for who I was. I found a purpose that had nothing to do with being someone's mother or servant. I found myself. But I'd be lying if I said I never thought about Vanessa. I did. Every day. The pain of what she'd done never fully went away. It just became something I carried, like an old scar that aches when it rains. I wondered how she was doing. If she ever felt guilty. If she ever missed me. I got my answer 8 months after Catherine found me. I was at the foundation office when Marie called me. Mrs. Thompson, there are some people here to see you. They don't have an appointment, but they're very persistent. They say they're family. My stomach dropped. I knew immediately who it was. Send them to the conference room, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I'll be there in a moment. I took my time walking there. I needed to prepare myself to put on my armor. Because I knew this wasn't going to be a happy reunion. People like Vanessa and Richard only showed up when they wanted something. I opened the conference room door. There they were. Vanessa and Richard, sitting at the long table. And they looked terrible. Vanessa's designer clothes were rumpled, outdated. Her hair needed cutting, coloring. She'd lost weight in an unhealthy way, her face drawn and tired. Richard's suit was shiny with age, his shoes scuffed. His usual arrogance was replaced with something that looked almost like panic. They both stood when I entered. Mom. Vanessa said, stepping toward me with her arms outstretched like she was going to hug me. I stepped back. Mrs. Thompson, please, I said coldly. We're not on informal terms. She flinched like I'd slapped her. Good. Mom, Mrs. Thompson, she corrected herself. We've been looking for you for months. Where have you been? We went to your old apartment, called everyone we could think of. Looking for me? I raised an eyebrow. How strange. I was under the impression you wanted me gone. Let's see how you survive, wasn't that what you said, Richard? He had the grace to look ashamed. Barely. That was a mistake. We were under a lot of stress, Anne. And you threw a 65-year-old woman out into the street on Christmas Eve, I finished. Yes, I remember. What I'm curious about is why you're here now. They exchanged a glance. Vanessa's eyes were filled with tears, but I'd learned not to trust her tears. Richard cleared his throat. We've had some financial difficulties, he admitted. Financial difficulties. Of course. The stock market took a downturn and I made some bad investments, he continued. We lost most of our savings. And then the housing market shifted and we're upside down on the mortgage. We're facing foreclosure, Augusta. We're going to lose the house. I see, I said neutrally. And what does this have to do with me? We need help, Vanessa said, her voice breaking. Please, Mom. We made mistakes, but we're family. You wouldn't want to see us homeless, would you? You know what that's like now. The manipulation was so blatant it was almost funny. Playing on my compassion, on my recent experience. Assuming I'd forgotten how they treated me just because they were in trouble now. How much do you need? I asked. Hope flared in their faces. About 200,000 would get us current on everything, Richard said quickly. We'd pay you back, of course. With interest. $200,000. A fortune. More money than I'd seen in my entire life before Catherine. But here's the thing, I had access to that kind of money now. The foundation had a discretionary fund I managed, and Catherine had also privately set up an account for me with more than enough to cover their debts. I could save them. With a single phone call, I could stop their foreclosure, pay off their debts, and give them a fresh start. And they knew it. I could see it in their eyes. They'd found out somehow that I was working for Catherine Wells, that I had access to money now. That's why they'd tracked me down. Not because they missed me. Not because they felt guilty. But because they needed something. No, I said simply. Vanessa's face crumpled. What? I said no. I'm not giving you money. But you have it. Richard burst out. We did our research. You work for Catherine Wells. She's a billionaire. You're running her foundation. You have access to millions. You're right, I do, I said calmly. And I use that money to help people in genuine need. Homeless families. Abused women. Elderly people who've been abandoned by their families. I looked pointedly at Vanessa. People who've been thrown away like garbage by the people who were supposed to love them. We made a mistake. Vanessa was crying openly now. People make mistakes, Mom. You of all people should understand forgiveness. Forgiveness? I felt my composure crack, felt the anger I'd been holding back start to seep through. You want to talk to me about forgiveness? Let me tell you what forgiveness is, Vanessa. Forgiveness is what I extended to you every time you blew off our plans. Every time you made me feel like a burden. Every time you chose Richard's cruelty over showing me basic kindness. I forgave and forgave and forgave, hoping you'd remember you had a mother who loved you. My voice was rising now, all the pain spilling out. But you didn't want forgiveness. You wanted a servant. Someone to cook and clean and disappear when you were done with her. And when I had the audacity to exist, to take up space, to be human, you threw me out. On Christmas Eve. In the freezing cold. With nowhere to go. We didn't know you had nowhere to go, Richard tried. You didn't care. I shouted. That's the truth of it. You didn't care if I lived or died. And now you have the audacity to show up here, to call me Mom again, to ask for my help. After everything you did? Please, Vanessa whispered. We're desperate. So was I said, my voice dropping to something cold and hard. I was desperate when I begged you to let me stay. I was desperate when I sat on that frozen bench wondering if I'd survive the night. And you laughed. You actually laughed as you slammed the door in my face. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I'm so sorry, I was wrong, I was influenced by Richard, Don't you dare blame this on him, I snapped. You made your choices, Vanessa. You're an adult. You chose to treat me like trash. You chose money and status over your own mother. Own it. Don't insult me by pretending you were some helpless victim. Silence fell. Vanessa cried into her hands. Richard stared at the table. I learned something these past months, I said quietly. I learned that I have value. That I'm not a burden or a parasite or any of the other things you made me feel like. I'm a human being who deserves respect and kindness. And I learned that family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up for you. Who treats you with dignity. Who chooses you. I walked to the door and opened it. I'm not giving you money. I'm not bailing you out of the consequences of your choices. You'll figure it out, just like you told me to. You're adults, after all. Mom, please. Vanessa stood, reaching for me. I'm not your mom, I said. Not anymore. You made that clear on Christmas Eve. I'm just Augusta Thompson now. A woman you used to know. Goodbye, Vanessa. I walked out and closed the door on her sobs. My hands were shaking as I made my way back to my office, but I felt lighter somehow. Like I'd been carrying a weight I didn't know was there and had finally set it down. Catherine found me an hour later, sitting at my desk, staring out the window. Marie told me what happened, she said gently. Are you okay? I think I am, I said, surprised to find it was true. I think I'm better than okay, actually. She sat down across from me. That must have been hard. It was. But it was also necessary. I needed to close that door. To stop hoping for something that was never going to happen. What will you do if they keep trying to contact you? They won't, I said with certainty. They didn't come here for me. They came for money. Now that they know they won't get it, they'll move on. Find someone else to manipulate. That's who they are. Catherine nodded slowly. For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. So do I. And I meant it. In that moment, I felt no guilt, no second guessing. Just peace. 2 months later, I attended a gala for the foundation. It was a huge event, hundreds of donors, politicians, celebrities. Catherine had insisted I be there as the foundation's director, to give a speech about the work we were doing. I wore a dress Catherine had helped me pick out, simple but elegant. My hair was styled, my makeup professional. I looked like someone who belonged in that ballroom full of wealthy, powerful people. The speech went well. I talked about the families we'd helped, the programs we'd started. I talked about what it meant to be vulnerable, to need help, to receive kindness from strangers. I didn't mention Vanessa by name, but I talked about how family can fail you and how you can build a new family from the people who choose to love you. The audience gave me a standing ovation. Catherine hugged me afterward, her eyes bright with pride. You're a natural, she said. The foundation is lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have the foundation, I replied. It saved my life. As the evening wound down, I was standing by one of the tall windows, watching the city lights, when Marie approached. Mrs. Thompson? There are some people at the back entrance. Security won't let them in, but they're insisting they know you. A younger woman and a man. They look disheveled. My stomach tightened. Tell security to have them removed from the property. If they come back, call the police. Marie nodded and left. I turned back to the window, my reflection looking back at me. Strong. Confident. Whole. I read somewhere that the best revenge is living well. I never really understood what that meant before. But standing there in that beautiful ballroom, surrounded by people who respected me, doing work that mattered, I finally got it. I wasn't living well to spite Vanessa. I was living well because I deserved to. Because I'd survived the worst betrayal imaginable and come out the other side stronger. A few weeks later, I was reading the local newspaper over breakfast when I saw it. A small article in the business section. Local couple files for bankruptcy following investment losses. There was a photo. Vanessa and Richard, looking haggard and defeated, leaving a courthouse. I read the article. They'd lost the house. Lost their cars. Richard had been fired from his job for some kind of ethics violation. They were living in a small apartment, working retail jobs, drowning in debt. Part of me, a small, wounded part, felt a flash of satisfaction. Karma. Justice. They were experiencing the fear and instability they'd subjected me to. But mostly I just felt sad. Sad for the daughter I'd raised, who'd chosen this path. Sad for the woman she could have been if she hadn't let greed and status corrupt her. I clipped the article and put it in a folder. Not to gloat over, but to remember. To remind myself why I'd made the choice I made. Why I'd closed that door. Catherine found me in the garden later that day. I was sitting on a bench, a comfortable, warm bench, so different from that frozen one where she'd found me, reading a book. "Penny for your thoughts?" she asked, sitting beside me. I showed her the article. She read it silently, then folded it and handed it back. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Sad," I admitted. "And relieved. And I'm grateful." "That's a lot of feelings." "It's a complicated situation." We sat in silence for a while, watching the birds flit between the trees. "You know what I've learned?" I said finally. Blood doesn't guarantee love. Being someone's parent doesn't mean they'll treat you with kindness. Biology doesn't create obligation. What creates an obligation? Catherine asked. Choice, I said. Showing up. Being there when things are hard. Choosing someone over and over again, not because you have to, but because you want to. That's what creates a real family. Catherine smiled. I agree. You saved my life, I said, turning to look at her. You're a stranger who became family. Who saw me at my absolute lowest and decided I was worth saving. That's more than my own daughter did. You saved your own life, Catherine corrected gently. I just gave you the resources. But the strength, the resilience, the capacity for growth, that was all you, Augusta. Maybe she was right. Maybe we'd saved each other. Her cynicism about whether kindness still existed. Me from freezing to death on a park bench. Either way, I was grateful. Grateful for that moment when I'd given away my coat. Grateful for Catherine's test. Grateful for this second chance at life. A year after Catherine found me, the foundation opened a new shelter specifically for elderly women experiencing homelessness. It was my project, my baby. I'd designed the programs, hired the staff, and set up the services. At the ribbon-cutting ceremony, I gave another speech. I talked about how it felt to be invisible, to be discarded by society and family alike. I talked about the importance of dignity, of treating every person as though they matter, because they do. No one should have to choose between freezing to death and begging a family who doesn't love them, I said. No one should feel like they're a burden for simply existing. This shelter is a promise that we see you. We value you. You matter. The audience applauded. Mayor, donors, press, they were all there. And standing in the front row, beaming with pride, was Catherine. After the ceremony, an older woman approached me hesitantly. She was thin, weathered, her clothes clean but worn. Mrs. Thompson, she said quietly. I just wanted to thank you. I stayed in this shelter last month when I had nowhere else to go. The staff treated me like a human being. Like I mattered. I haven't felt that way in years. My eyes filled with tears. What's your name? Dorothy. Dorothy, you do matter. You always did. I'm so glad we could help you. She hugged me then, tight and brief. When she pulled away, she was crying too. People like you give me hope, she whispered. Thank you. As I watched her walk away, I thought about that frozen bench. About the woman I'd been a year ago, broken, abandoned, contemplating death. And I thought about the woman I was now, whole, purposeful, surrounded by love. The journey between those two versions of myself had been painful. Excruciating, even. But it had also been necessary. Because I'd learned what I was made of. I'd learned that I could survive the unsurvivable. That I could take the worst betrayal imaginable and transform it into something meaningful. I'd learned that kindness, even small kindness, like giving a stranger your coat, can change everything. I never spoke to Vanessa again. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she and Richard eventually divorced, that she was working as a waitress somewhere, struggling to make ends meet. Part of me wondered if she ever thought about me. If she ever regretted what she'd done. If she ever realized what she'd lost. But those questions didn't haunt me anymore. Because the truth is, it doesn't matter. Her choices are her burden to carry, not mine. I'd built a new life. A better life. A life filled with purpose and meaning and people who genuinely cared about me. Catherine became the daughter I needed, the family I chose. The foundation staff became my friends, my community. The women we helped became my mission. I was Augusta Thompson. Not someone's burden. Not someone's servant. Not someone's abandoned mother. Just Augusta. Whole and complete and enough, exactly as I was. And every Christmas Eve, I do something special. I put on old clothes and a thin coat and I walk through the poorest neighborhoods of the city. And when I see someone in need, someone cold, someone hungry, someone afraid, I help them. Sometimes it's a coat. Sometimes it's a meal. Sometimes it's just a kind word, an acknowledgement that they exist, that they matter. Because I remember what it felt like to be invisible. To be discarded. To sit on that frozen bench wondering if anyone would even notice when I was gone. And I remember the stranger who noticed me. Who saw me at my worst and decided I was worth saving. I can't save everyone. But I can save someone. And maybe that someone will pay it forward, will help another person, who'll help another, who'll help another. Kindness ripples outward. It multiplies. It transforms. My daughter taught me that blood doesn't guarantee love. But Catherine taught me something more important, that love doesn't require blood. And in the end, that's the lesson I carry with me every day. The lesson I try to pass on to every person I meet, every woman we help, every soul who thinks they're alone. You are not disposable. You are not a burden. You are not too old, too broken, too poor, too anything. You are enough. You matter. You deserve kindness. And when the people who should love you fail you, when family betrays you, when you're sitting on that frozen bench wondering how you'll survive, hope can return. Family can be found. Life can begin again. It did for me. And it can for you too. My name is Augusta Thompson. I'm 66 years old now. And I'm here to tell you that betrayal doesn't have to be the end of your story. It can be the beginning.